Reality therapist perception.
Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV, where we give our therapist takes and perceptions to all things trending TV and movies. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck. We're both licensed therapists, ready to talk about The Crowded Room, Part 2, so episodes 6 through 10.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but before we do, I need to do like a little apology because apparently we spoiled.
What did we do?
So in our part 1, we had shed light on the fact that Danny had dissociative identity disorder. And that wasn't, I guess that was supposed to be the big reveal at the end of the series. But yeah, I think it was supposed to like be giving mystery thriller. And so, sorry, but I just assume everyone's like me and like immediately Googles everything there's possibly to know about what you're watching. And like, if you do a quick Google, you see that it's based on a true story about this guy who, you know, I mean, it was a history making case.
Yeah.
So, oops.
Yeah. Sorry for anyone watching that was upset. It is, you are talking to two therapists though. So
yeah,
we had to talk about the therapy.
Of course.
The part. And yeah. Ooh. Okay.
Our bad. But I guess I also wanted to throw in there that my husband also pointed this out. And I'm bringing that up because I've realized that I've referenced my husband on the last 2 Reactivity TVs. And I think it's because I have in mind that when you go on leave, he's going to be in the hot seat with me. So get ready. You'll meet him soon. But we still have plenty of episodes of all the things before you go on leave.
Yes, we do. Including this one.
Yes.
So what did you think of the last part of the season? Okay.
So I guess as my thoughts as a viewer, I liked the second part of the season or series way more than the first. And I think that is because like we understood more and got like exposed more to
answers.
We got answers. We learned about the trauma. We like saw like so much about his alters. Mm-hmm. And I just thought they did such a good job. And I know I had said to you, like Amanda Seyfried, or however you say her name. I mean, her character just like did our jobs for us, basically, in describing trauma and describing, at that time, it wasn't called dissociative identity disorder, but I was so pleased, and I definitely cried at the end. I had a really favorable reaction to the second half, even though it was a harder watch, actually.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we like to learn things. We like first stories to unfold, and that started to happen. So I feel the same way about that second part. And I got upset just thinking about that whole second half of the season when I was planning for this episode, and just thinking even harder about what was really going on and about Danny and his life. And
yeah, right. And how, I mean, unsettling and isolating that must have been. I was also thinking this wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. It was in the 70s. And I was having a reaction to the lawyers and the court and their dismissal of mental health. And
think about how far it's come,
and again, relatively short time. And so that was kind of cool to keep into perspective. But I think the show did such a good job at allowing the viewer to have a lot of empathy for Danny. And obviously that was on purpose, because we saw throughout his life, and especially through the trial and whatnot, that people were not having a lot of empathy for him. They thought he was a weird kid. They might not have even noticed some of his eccentricities. And so it was nice that, I mean, for me all along, I was like, oh gosh, this poor kid. And also, Raya held so much empathy for Danny throughout the series as well. And I thought that was just such a beautiful thing. And again, when we see mental health not just portrayed on screen, but in real life, mental health doesn't get a ton of empathy. And so I thought that was just such a nice reminder.
And the fact that and I remember that in our last Crowded Room episode, we didn't really understand her role. And like, we knew she was a professor and we knew she was like there to kind of interrogate him, but she ended up becoming a practicing therapist afterwards. And so even now, just knowing that like that wasn't her role, but clearly it was something that she felt so strongly about and was really good at, and then went on to do it. Yeah. I don't know if that's part of the true story, but I like to think so.
I'd like to think so too. Yeah. But I guess like as we really get into our episode, that was like one of my main takeaways was the role of empathy in especially the second part, in being able to have empathy for Danny and for what he was experiencing, especially as we learned more about his life. I mean, it's definitely a good example of like that cliche saying, like, be kind, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And that's kind of what I kept thinking about. Like, no one was really looking out for this kid. Like, no one had any real idea about, how much he was really suffering. Even him, he didn't even really know. And so I was thinking about that, like the empathy for Danny, learning more about Raya and her life and her role in being a mother, dealing with her mother and dealing with stresses of career. And so like getting that insight into her life was really wonderful. And that she held empathy for Danny's mother. And also Stan, how he was able to kind of go from this place of being a skeptic to being more empathic, for highlighting for the jury how much he'd been failed. And as we see him navigate through his own PTSD. So I just thought, just like seeing empathy displayed in such a beautiful way, as hard as it is sometimes to find empathy when you don't really understand what's going on. I thought the show did such a good job with that.
Right. Yeah. It's and that is such a hard thing to do. Like, it's much easier to find empathy for somebody in a situation that you can actually understand or actually relate to. But to find empathy for somebody that you don't get it, and maybe you don't totally buy into it, that's like gold.
Yeah, for sure.
What about mom? I mean, she admitted to Danny what she wasn't able to do for him, and that she knew essentially the whole time what was going on. And seeing that scene, after having that scene between Candy and Raya, where Raya was also skeptical that like mom probably knew. And she had so much empathy for mom. She had so much understanding for what she must have been going through to have been able to enable what was happening. And not just thinking of mom as somebody that doesn't care about her kid or doesn't, like, just isn't a good person or whatever it is. Like, she was really digging into where Candy was really coming from. And you could see, I mean, she was coming at it from a clinical lens, but also from a motherhood lens, where she, in being a mother and having a mother, she gets that part. And it certainly allowed me to have more empathy for mom. And I think that was very well exemplified in in that scene, and then when she met with Danny, and you don't see that a lot in shows. You kind of end up wanting to villainize people. You want people to blame, and you want people to like deserve bad things because bad things happen to somebody. And I didn't end up feeling that for her. I just felt really terrible.
Yeah. No, I like that you bring that up because it's not so black and white as that. You know, with humans, we have like, we're so complex. And yeah, I think was Candy the mother of the year? No, she was incredibly flawed. And also I haven't said this in a really long time, but she was incredibly resourceful in the way that she was trying to get her own needs met. And did she put her own needs before her kids? Sure. Sure she did. That she, and maybe not, maybe she would argue that she didn't. Maybe she would argue that having stability and a father figure or having financial stability was good for Danny, but she felt like she needed to be rescued. And so she was trying to find someone that she thought could take care of her. That she was trying to, even when she shows up to court and Marlon kind of follows her there and he basically gives her an ultimatum and she sides with him rather than Danny, like you see it's much more complicated than you might think for her. It's not so simple as I'm just going to pick my kid. Like that.
Well, and also not to mention that Raya just brought to light this other perspective of how to potentially relieve her of some of that guilt. But meanwhile, she'd been living this other way for years and years and years. And Marlon just went and reinforced that. So this other new one was new and it wasn't secured yet. It wasn't like she was totally bought into that yet either. So I see how she just went right back into what she was so used to.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's a very empathetic view that you're right. Like she was sitting with this guilt for so long, which is probably why she was so distant from Danny. Right. And so Marlon kind of used that to his advantage. So he exploited that as a way to kind of get her on his side. And yeah, you're not just going to leave a belief structure overnight. Even though we as the audience, Danny as the kid might want her to, need her to.
We're rooting for that.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't happen. It's not a fairy tale ending, you know, while she goes to visit him, as, you know, Danny says, like, she's, you know, not coming again, you know, this was what it was.
That was also such a profound thing for him to say. Like, not only is he in the process of accepting himself and the traumas he's endured, but he's also learning about other people and accepting how other people are going to treat him and his own mother. And he said that so matter-of-factly, not to say that he doesn't actually feel emotionally tied to that as well, but in the way that he said that, it sounded so empowering. And it sounded like he was in a place where he can admit that and not be okay with it, but
there was acceptance. Yeah, this is who my mom is. This is how my mom is. This is how our relationship is going to be. And yeah, does he want that? No. Is he okay with that? No. But yeah, that's like literally when we talk about acceptance and radical acceptance, that's what it looks like. Of like, this is what it is. And so I need to be able to tolerate that in order for the rest of my life to be able to kind of function and move on. The last thing I just really wanted to highlight, and this is as cliche as it gets for two therapists talking about a show about mental health, and that's just to really highlight. And again, Danny's story is an extreme one, but it's to really highlight that when we internalize and try to consciously or not push down our feelings and our experiences, that they inevitably pop up somewhere else,
Somehow.
some other way, some way, somehow. And yeah, we all won't develop dissociative identity disorder, but like in a less extreme example, when we go through something difficult, of course, there's the urge to not want to deal with it, to pack it away, to try to compartmentalize. Our bodies and brains don't work that way. It will find a way out. For just even a small example of something shitty happens at work, and then you take it out on your significant other. Like, it just doesn't digest and get eliminated. It lives and breathes in you until you resolve it. And so, again, this show was a more extreme example of that, but it's just a good reminder to make sure that you do have a trusted person that you can talk about things with, to be able to process things with, to get things out in the open, outside of you, so that they don't swallow you whole and completely change your personality, completely change how you interact with other people.
Good way to end it.
Okay.
Good way to wrap it up.
Yes. Well, all right. Crowded Room. We're done.
If you haven't watched, watch it.
Watch it.
If you haven't watched our part 1, watch that.
Watch that. Sorry about the spoiler again. But we will be back next week. Finale of The Bachelorette, season 20, charity season. So stay tuned for that and much more. And always let us know in the comments what else we should be watching. What else? Yeah. What are you watching? We want to know. We'll watch it too. We will see you next time. Bye.